What's happening with young men today?
What we're finding is really tough.
They're struggling so much. We have rising violence, we have rising anger.
External pressures in the world. There's no template or blueprint or pathway for them to understand how to navigate some of those things.
What's the downstream effects of porn on young men?
The addiction factor, the shame, the insecurity, and the mental health struggles. There's just so many impacts.
Porn is not real life. That is not the way to learn about sex and intimacy and relationships.
The connection in the real life, who are you looking up to? Who are you able to have these conversations with?
So, I'm going to have a son and I'm worried. How do you navigate that?
We haven't talked about it here, but
Jess VanderWier is a therapist and founder of Nurtured First, a popular platform supporting families.
Todd Minerson is the country director for Movember Canada, a leading global men's health organization.
I want to get fit. Yeah, I want to be successful. I want to be an entrepreneur. But then comes the other stuff, the Trojan horse of come and get fit and we'll teach you how to hate women. Who would expect this search for fitness is going to lead me into like a white supremacist club?
A lot of people still don't really understand just how bad some of these performative masculine personalities are.
I agree.
Nick Fuentes. I get the charisma. I can understand the appeal. And then he goes on to say women want to be raped. Well,
Let me tell you about Andrew Tate.
We find it very interesting that the majority of you who watch and listen to this show aren't yet subscribed to our channels across Spotify, Apple, YouTube. It would mean the world to us if you can do us that small kindness. It allows us to continue to bring on amazing guests week after week and continue to provide you with amazing value and content. It's the only thing we'll ever ask of you. If you can hit that follow or subscribe button, it would mean the world to us. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode.
Todd and Jess, welcome back to Gents Talk. I'm really excited to have this conversation because, Todd, you have a son.
Yes.
Jess, you have daughters, but you do a lot of work with kids. And obviously, Todd, your work with Movember is extremely important. Why don't we start with what you're seeing from that lens? What's happening with young men today?
Well, I mean, what's happening with my son or what's happening with young men in general or the mysteries that we still have about understanding the mind of the young man?
I want to hear it all.
That's an individual episode each one.
Yeah, that's 3 episodes and you're booked for the next year. It's a really interesting time for young men. It's a really difficult time for young men right now. There's some of the things that are external pressures in the world that are changing rapidly for young guys, and there's no template or blueprint or pathway for them to understand how to navigate some of those things. But it's also an incredible opportunistic moment for young men to chart something different than what we've had in front of us, for the past 40, 50, 100, 5,000 years as men. And for young men in particular, I think there's a desire to get to some of those places, but the odds are stacked against them. And the places where they're learning those things are also stacked against them in some of the things that we're learning with the work with Movember as well. Like, the look into the male influencer spaces, the research is really nascent still. It's definitely not fleshed out and there's a lot more work to do. But some of it misses the point in not listening to young men and what their experiences are. And some of the work that we've done has started with that. And what we're finding is really tough stuff. There's an appeal there that brings young men in because they want to feel connected. They want to feel listened to. They want to feel like somebody cares about what they care about. But when they get there, it's a bit of a Trojan horse sometimes because other more harmful and damaging issues come to play, like views on women, like this focus on ripped and rich and at all costs. And those come with feelings of worthlessness and, not being able to meet certain standards and pushing yourself into risky and unsafe spaces. So it's a complicated time. And there's lots of, literature that's starting to tell us there's better options for young guys, but there's still not enough actual better options for young guys out there.
Jess, in the work that you're doing with families and young men in particular, what are you seeing from your lens as a therapist?
I would say similar to Todd. I would see
a deep need for belonging, to be seen, to be heard in these young boys. And I would say, yeah, so I'm a mom of 3 girls, but in my therapy practice, I actually end up seeing mostly boys, and mostly boys who come in with anger issues at school. You know, they're getting bullied, or they are the bully, or they're having difficulties in class, they're acting out, they're getting sent to the principal's office. And I'm seeing this a lot in the earlier ages, so maybe the like 8 to 13, and then starting to see them get involved in, what they're seeing online. But I really do see this deep need, craving for belonging, for positive role models. And sometimes when they don't have that, but then they have the access to the devices, like you were saying, Todd, they stumble across something that just makes them feel seen. And it is so inviting and praise, for lack of a better word, I think that is the correct word, on all of their insecurities, and they latch onto that. Yeah. And so I would say that's what I'm seeing a lot of in my practice, and parents who are good parents who really do try to support their children, who feel really lost in how to help them when they start to kind of engage in that online content, or even start to feel insecure and that need for belonging.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of boys being affected by this type of behavior online, or just even their own behaviors?
Yeah, I would say in the years I've been a therapist, specifically, maybe it started pre-COVID, but I would say COVID to now, and I'm curious, Todd, to hear your experience too, I've seen a big shift. I think COVID, during that period of time that we all don't like to talk about, the pandemic, we were all home, right? And I think these boys at earlier and earlier ages started to be on devices. They started to feel this craving for belonging because they were isolated from their peers and from everybody as well. And they started to have more access to, okay, well, where else can I find that? And now they've been reintegrated into school. And some of that has been very difficult because they also missed those years of social development and learning how to be friends with people. So going back into school has been tough. So then that continues to be an outlet. And I think that's one small reason of why they're struggling so much. But I will say I've seen a massive shift kind of pre and post pandemic.
Todd, in terms of what you're seeing from Movember's lens?
Yeah, I think it's a case where a lot of those challenges and tensions against kind of these rigid ideas of masculinity have been there for a long time. Mm-hmm. And we see them in places where they aren't able to be contained anymore. We see them emerge in more healthy ways, like in queer communities, for example, or communities that get really connected to their cultural identities, for example, right? There's other alternatives for young men to find belonging, to find meaning, to find community. Exactly. And I think what has happened since the pandemic and post-pandemic is that these accelerators have been put on the fire, like these algorithms that feed young men this harmful stuff. And it often starts with just actually healthy things that they're looking for: connection, fitness. Yeah. Who would expect 10 years ago to start searching up fitness, information as a young boy or a young man? Like, for me, it was like looking at old military journals for workout, programs, not going online and finding, wow, this search for fitness is going to lead me into like a white supremacist fitness club. Like, that's just a different kind of accelerant that's put on these young men today that we never had in the past. So I think these tensions have always been there because most men understand at a deep, deep level that the way the world is set up is not necessarily against them, but it's not working for them either. But these things are not helping. The algorithms, the Trojan horse of come and get fit and we'll teach you how to hate women. Like, that's not a good pathway for anybody, right?
What is it about? So when you talk about the algorithm, I've spent a lot of time just trying to reflect on the role of the algorithm. And really and truly, the algorithm is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a tool. What it does is just accelerates certain behaviors that drive negative emotion, right? In the same way that if you open up your Instagram and you see, some news media outlet talk about a really big car crash in the city, it drives more engagement than when they talk about, the parade happening down the street, right? Nobody cares as much. So the algorithm is just going to drive engagement based on what people are in fact engaging with. And we know that when you trigger a negative emotion, people are more likely to, if you agree with it, you're going to comment because you're like, yes, finally someone who thinks and feels the same way I do, but they're saying that quiet part out loud. Mm-hmm. And if you don't agree with it, You might comment, but at most you might send it to your friend and be like, look how crazy this is. And the very simple fact of sending it to your friend in the DMs where no one else is going to see it drives that algorithm further and further. And so that content gets resonated and distributed further and further, and you have this problem. And I don't know if that's an algorithm problem or just the fact that we don't know how to deal with this type of content when we see it.
I think it's both. I think, Jess, you had some good points earlier about equipping people and young men in particular to understand what they're seeing and be critical about it, and missing those opportunities in a kind of post-pandemic world of alternative connections, real life connections, human connections, friend connections, community group connections. But I also think we can't be naive, Samir. Like, the algorithm may be benign, but the way people use it is not benign, right? Like, these people are getting rich off of preying on these insecurities, off of feeding this kind of stuff, off of fostering that kind of negative engagement to drive more clicks, to make them money. Like, that's the bottom line. Sometimes follow the money.
There's usually always a course to be sold at the end of it.
There's always something. Yes, there's always something. But I think you made a good point too, Samir, about how I think a lot of the boys that I see, at least, who fall into watching these videos, it's by accident, right? It's looking for something else, and then, and now they're talking about this, right? And now you've piqued my interest, and now I want to keep watching it. And your mind is so vulnerable at these young ages. And especially, let's say, if there is maybe a parent dynamic where there's an absent parent, or they don't have that relationship with their parent, they don't have someone to process it with, it's very easy to kind of be like, oh, okay, like this is where I'm getting my messaging from now. So I think, to your point of the connection in the real life, and like, who are your role models? Who are you looking up to? Who are you able to have these conversations with? I think that's really important. And then another point I just wanted to say is, I agree that I think men and boys have always struggled. We just now have different ways that they can try to cope, right? And these can become really dangerous just because they have access to people who have very dangerous ideas that, like when we were growing up, you just wouldn't have had access to that. Yeah. So it's very different, and it's important for parents to understand that.
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, my content consumption was movies and TV shows, and that was pretty much it. And then YouTube eventually, and by the time Instagram rolled around, I had at least my frontal lobe was developed enough that I could be like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, well, listen, I was recording songs off the radio, so let's not go back in time to the part here where we're getting our content from. Yeah. But yeah, it's changed rapidly, and we haven't really given young people the tools to sort it all out.
So how do we untangle them from this? Because it sounds like, when you're that young and you're being exposed to this, and you don't know to what degree you're being exposed to it because you don't have that cognitive ability yet, right? It almost sounds like the responsibility falls back on the adults in our society to be like, hey, this is a problem. And you hope that obviously I've met some young men who are way more mature than I ever was at that age. And I'm like, that's great. That gives me hope. And then I've met some young men who I'm like, if I put any kind of video in front of you, you would probably follow along and do exactly what that video tells you to do. So how do we untangle those young men from what's happening? Because the idea of getting rid of social media is not going to happen. I know I saw in Australia that they limited. I think it's like 16
it's a ban
years
under
old.
The age of 16.
I don't know how that's going to work in practice, because there's always ways around those things, right? So I'm just curious, how do we untangle?
Well, I would love to hear what you think, Jess, from your work as well. But I think we start by assuming young people are smarter than we normally do, and having honest, open conversations with them about social media, about how it works, about who's benefiting from this, about is what you're seeing real life. I think so that kind of critical media analysis is definitely a role that adults can play. And it's not just a parent kind of responsibility. I think it's an everybody responsibility. There's systemic pressure that we can put on these companies as well to really honor the kind of ethical guidelines and behaviors that they propose to have out there. We haven't even talked about AI and what kind of harms that can start to cause in the same space. But there is hopefully a social contract that we have with some of these companies that provide this content to do some of that stuff. And then the third thing I would say is like help young people form communities outside of the digital space. Or even if it is in the digital space, you and I have talked about gaming before in the past, right? That's a great way to have community as well, but it's not in the algorithm world. It's not in the like content world. It is real connection in a virtual space, right? So,
Jess, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too, but I just wanted to add a point about the AI piece. I made the mistake of going on Twitter recently, and there's this new thing where people are going around uploading photos of celebrities or just women in their lives and going, asking Grok, the AI tool on Twitter, to basically change their outfits. And it's usually some sort of really revealing outfit. And it's just these women who are, you can see them even commenting in the posts, like, why, like, you can't be doing this to me, right? And I'm very concerned about AI's use in that sense, but just your thoughts on how you untangle. And also, I'm curious, because you see families, you know, how much responsibility is on the parents and how much is it maybe the education system? How much is it, you know, the sports leagues? Like, who needs to be involved?
I think all adults. Yeah. I mean, I always like to start with like my ideal dream world and then I like bring it down to reality. But I think in my dream world, all adults take this serious and we see that, okay, we have rising mental health diagnosis, especially in young boys. We have rising violence, we have rising anger. And why is this happening, right? I think we need to be curious as adults and know that this is our job to try and take care of them and preserve them and preserve their childhood so that we can try and lessen this impact. So I would start there. I think it's everyone. But then I always like to kind of start at the beginning, you know, the parental responsibility in the home, right? We know that the impact of having a loving, dependable caregiver for a child from a very early age is huge. It's profound on their entire life. And so if we can try to help equip parents to kind of see what their role is from an early age in their child's life, even as the person who says no, right? So when the child is like, hey, I want to have a gaming system in my bedroom, and the parent's like, you know what? You're 9 years old. I don't think that's a good idea. And the child is like super mad. I want to help equip parents to be like, and that's okay. Like walk your child through being mad about it and be the dependable leader that they need. And so a huge part of what I'm doing as a psychotherapist and also in my online work is trying to equip parents to step into that role, to be the confident leader that their child needs. And then also, as Todd was saying, to have those conversations with kids. And I always talk about having those conversations early and not it being like one big conversation, like sit down, let me tell you about Andrew Tate, and let me tell you about this and this and this.
We're gonna get it a one and done here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's have that one-time conversation about all the things and now, okay, we're good. Like wipe my hands of it. Like I have young children at home. My youngest will be 4, my oldest is 9, but we're already having conversations about, you know, what are things that make you feel uncomfortable? What's that? I call it like the uh-oh feeling. Like, is there things that you've seen online? Is there things that you've heard from your friends that give you an uh-oh feeling? And last year, my kids have a pretty long bus ride. There was something that happened on the bus ride. Kids all have tablets on the bus right now. Like, not my kids, but like most children have tablets. And how easy is it to see something inappropriate, right? So something happened, but my daughter was able to be like, I had that feeling, Mom, of like, this isn't okay. I'm not comfortable with this. And she told me and we were able to deal with it. So I really like to equip parents, even at these early ages. I think that's a big part of untangling it. And a lot of parents are like, oh, but Jess, I'm so uncomfortable, right? No one ever had these conversations with me. It's brand new. And so I think as leaders, as people who are trying to equip parents, teaching them how to have those conversations, I think is a big part of untangling it as well.
How do you, there's going to be parents listening and watching who want to take the devices away at that young of an age, but then worry that their kids are going to be isolated because they don't fit in with the rest of the cohort. How do you navigate that?
I kind of want to hear from Todd because your kids are a little older, and I'm curious how that has gone for you.
I mean, this like your point's so well taken, Jess. Like that helping equip parents, because it's a confusing world for us too. Like it
exactly.
is. This is uncharted territory for us, right? Like my dad he's like a fat fingered, thumb typer. He doesn't know anything about this stuff and wouldn't have been able to help me. And I love you, Dad, wherever you are right now. But like, it's just pointing out that generational gap, and we're in this brave new world as well, right? So it's really tricky. I think, there are kind of parental controls and guidelines that you can put in place on certain devices. You can have those conversations and make them, not a one and done. And you have to be constant. You have to be present. You have to be understanding from your kid's perspective too. Why is this important to you? What do you want to get out of it? And sometimes it's like, well, all my friends are there and I miss out on things. And like, okay, so how do we help you not miss out on those things? But how do we also tell you that there's some things here that may not be right or appropriate or healthy for you? It's a constant thing. And I would say even with two kids, one 19 and one 15, our experience with the 15-year-old is informed by what went first with the 19-year-old. It's moving that fast, right? You don't really know what you know until you get in the middle of it. Like my wife and I still joke, what's the Snapchat? What's like, what's the TikTok? Like we always put the in front of it.
That's a very parent thing.
To point out how like out of touch we are. But also to say to them, tell me, inform me, share what you know, right? And bring them into the conversation rather than don't do this. We're banning social media at 16. This is not like.
So you don't think that would work? It shouldn't just
be a top down. I think it's got to be like an engaged process with the young people in your life.
You don't think banning social media for a younger age group, whether that comes from the government or the social media platforms, is effective?
I don't want to get in trouble, Samir. So I'm not going to say if I don't like. I'm honestly in this space. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it will work or not. I know it's probably coming from a place of good intention, of kind of protection for young people. But I'm not convinced, like as a young person or when I was young, you could find a workaround on almost anything,
Absolutely.
Right? So is it effective? I'm not sure. Is it well-intended? Probably. Are there greater responsibilities for all of the players than just banning it for under a certain age? Like at 15 and 364 days, you're not capable of navigating this, and at 16 years and one day you are capable. It's, I think, more nuanced than a ban can handle is, I think, where I would go with it.
I almost feel like that would also anger young men even more. Like, oh, now they're trying to take away our voice.
Yeah.
And so it almost makes them want to congregate even more and find others who feel the way they do. It and amplifies their voices even more.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I would agree. I think it's so nuanced, and to just say no blanket statement is difficult. And also, we know young kids and we know how we can work around most things, right? A lot of things have you're not supposed to watch this before you're 18, and they're still watching it anyway. So I would agree. And I think, to your point, I think it's so good about the being curious with kids, right? And that's so much of what I am always teaching parents too, of like, so your 11-year-old wants a phone. Okay, so don't just say absolutely not, never, like you're never getting it, don't ever ask me again, right? That's what you might want to say. Like, you're 11, go outside and ride your bike. It's like, okay, tell me about it. Help me understand. And understanding that, back to what I was saying at the beginning, that children seek belonging, right? And when they need belonging. And so ideally they can find that in the home. And that's actually such a protective factor for when they end up being online. It's like, I don't need to go online to go find the place where I belong the most. I have that at home. I have my parents. I have my siblings. I have my good real life friends or social groups or whatever it is. That protects them. So then when they're online, that's not necessarily what they're searching for. Or if they see it, they're not as vulnerable to go down that path. And so I think the conversation needs to be greater than just banning at 16 or what age. Like, people always ask, what age should I give a device? Well, I can't really tell you like when your child's going to be ready. You also need to know your child.
Yeah. Each one's so unique and different. I'm curious, Jess, when you have these conversations with parents, in theory, they're going to spend a small window of time in a day with them relative to the amount of time they spend online, the time that they spend in school and with their friends. How do you fight an uphill battle when the majority of what they're receiving comes from a window of time where the parents are just not present?
It's kind of the worst. Like, I hate that as a parent. Like, we're back to going to school and I see my kids in the morning for a few hours and I see them at night and then it's bedtime or we have karate or like whatever.
And how do you find time to even have meaningful conversations when you have all those different things?
I think, and like Todd, I'm interested in your perspective too, but I think you really do need to be intentional about it as a parent. And sometimes it means saying no to certain things your kids do. Like my oldest is so extroverted. She could just go like all day long. She would be in an extracurricular every night if it was up to her and on a play date all weekends. Because she just loves people. She loves to do it. Like if I said yes to everything, that girl would be busy like just 24/7 and she would love it. But I know that I need to, especially at this age, she's just entering the tween years, be the most important, like my husband and I need to be the most important people in her life still. Right. So it is for me being like, no, you can have your 2 activities. Like she does 2 nights a week still. It's still maybe too much for me, but and we just had this conversation. She wants to do a 3rd night. And I was like, you know what, right now, no. And she didn't like that. She wants to do the 3rd night. And I said, I think it's really important that you have that downtime. We still have that time at home together. Let's do something together that you want to do. Like we can still do an activity together. So I do think for parents, it is actually being really mindful about that as well and being like, sure, maybe I only have 3 hours a night. So how am I going to use that time? And Todd, I'm curious.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on, Jess. And for me, it's always been like, don't fall into the quantity versus quality trap. Like quantity is impossible to match because in the world unless you're able not to work or whatever, you're homeschooling or like you're not going to get the quantity. You're not going to win the quantity in any way, right? The quantity argument. The quality one though is completely in your control. And so being intentional, carving out that time, making it frequent and consistent, like listening, like I've kind of, I still don't know what I'm doing as dad, to be honest. Like I'm kind of clueless, but the one thing I do know that has worked for me is be interested in what your kid's interested in and listen and learn. And it not only like shows that they're kind of an equal participant in that relationship, but it also sets them up to be able to talk about other things. So you can't win the quantity time because school and work and device and life is busy, but you can win the quality component of it and making sure that, as you said, Jess, that you're the most important things in each other's lives is that time that you have together.
I want to go back to the conversation around the stuff that kids see online. For parents listening and watching this or who have siblings who are younger, nieces, nephews, etc., what advice, actually, let me reframe this. Can you maybe simply share to them what is it that's happening online right now that's creating this problem for young men? Because there's going to be people out there that are, they'll come across this episode or they'll see something online and they're like, I get it at a very surface level, but I don't quite understand the scope of why this is such a big deal. And I think that's part of the education problem too, is a lot of people still don't really understand just how bad some of these performative masculine personalities are. Like just the level of problem that is. Who wants to take this?
You getting us in trouble again here, or like very provocative? I think you can boil down some things that we've talked about already, like both educating your ability as an older person in a younger person's life about how to have that conversation, equipping them with the tools to be more critical about it. But I mean, you can also just say some very kind of blunt things that help a young person think about and navigate things differently, right? AI is not real and it can make things that you shouldn't believe. Follow the money. Like, why is this person promoting this? Why is this perspective happening? Why is this news coming up in my feed all the time? And I think, we haven't talked about it here, but like, if we're talking about young men and online life, we should also say like, porn is not real life.
Absolutely.
And, that is not the way to learn about sex and intimacy and relationships.
Some of the stuff you see online right now, even on social media platforms, I'm like, this is borderline porn in some ways.
Oh, it doesn't take much. So a few clicks and there you are, right?
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's, again, the parents like we've talked a lot about the family, we could talk about the bigger system, but that's where the parents being the leader, right? And even something like porn, I always tell parents, you want to be the one who introduces your son to the topic, right? Because if they stumble across it or they hear their friends talking about it, like we know the ages where they're seeing it is getting younger and younger and younger for the first time. And they don't know that you know that it exists. They're going to think, my parent just doesn't even know this is out there. I'm not going to tell them. And so they're not going to have that conversation with you. But if they know that you know, and they see something that maybe they're curious about it, but they're also typically what I find, and I work with a lot of kids who've been exposed at young ages to porn, is that they are quite impacted by it, like in a negative way. Like they're scared of what they saw. They're really confused. They don't understand it. But when they don't have someone to talk to about that, what they end up doing is just searching it more and more and more to try and make sense of what it is that they've seen. And so when they have that scared, confused feeling, but they've already been informed by their parent, who can start with really small conversations like, hey, if you ever see a picture or a video of someone naked online, I want you to tell me. We can talk about it. You won't be in trouble. It is that safeguard. And now they can go back to their parent and have the conversation versus trying to be educated by their friends or just watching more videos.
It was definitely a taboo subject in my household growing up. And it was very similar to that point of like, or sorry, your point of, oh, my parents just don't even know it exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you watch a R-rated movie on TV and there's a nude scene and you're just uncomfortable and you're like, do they even know what's happening? Because I know. Like it's just, that's how ridiculous it is when you're like a teenager.
Yeah.
What's the downstream effects of porn on young men?
I mean, there's so much interesting research on it, but just the view that ends up giving them of women, I think, can be really toxic and negative, especially depending on what type of porn they end up kind of going down. The addiction factor of where it is addicting, and what I find is then the shame that comes with that, and then not talking about it because the shame, and then the insecurity and the mental health struggles, it kind of spirals. Also, the fact that whatever they started watching usually doesn't end up being enough. So kind of upping the ante in terms of violence or aggression or whatever it is they're watching in the porn, which can be very confusing. And again, that leads to the difficulties with women, but also just relating to people in general, the aggression. Like there's just so many impacts. And the younger we see it start and the longer it is before someone intervenes and has a conversation, the more difficult it is for them. And these difficulties can lead straight into adulthood. So it's not just, some parents say, oh, like I just hoped you would kind of stop, right? Like it's not
work that way.
It's not going to stop unless we intervene. But Todd, I'm curious.
I think, the downstream effects are not just porn. I think what we're learning about men's mental health when they get into their adult years is that the roots are usually somewhere in their very formative years, right? The trauma or the adverse experience or the disconnection from things happens at a much earlier age. And then when the mental health problem actually shows up, right? And it's not just porn, but we call them, maladaptive coping behaviors. And there's like a whole litany of them that men use to deal with that, whether it's work or sex or gambling or substances, alcohol, or just other obsessions and rabbit holes that they can become consumed by that become eventually unhealthy for them, right? And one of the things that we're looking at in terms of our work at Movember and the work around mental health is how do we have those earlier interventions with men so that progressively mental health can't get worse and worse and worse if it's not dealt with in a healthy way, but also that we understand that some of those maladaptive behaviors, when men go to get care, go to get help, they become the focus for the provider or the clinician. Like, okay, you're drinking too much, so how do we help you stop drinking? Well, that is important, but the drinking may be more a symptom than a cause, for example, right? And how do we get to those spaces with guys? And it's a different pathway we're learning for exploring men's mental health and men's trauma than other kinds of trauma. And it's easier for some providers, not all for sure. There's amazing providers out there, right? But for some to say, I'd rather help you deal with the drinking or the overworking or whatever than dig deep and understand
Right.
what's the trauma behind this, where you're really hurting and where you're really not well from.
I saw a post recently online, and it was a stitch, meaning, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, basically someone took someone else's video, had it playing, and then did a reaction to that video. And this guy basically used a video of Umberto, who is the CEO of White Ribbon, which is a nonprofit organization that works with victims of abuse and domestic violence. Great organization. I've had him on the podcast. We had an incredible conversation. He was being interviewed, or he was providing commentary, and he talked about something similar to you, Todd, about, when you look at fitness influencers and suddenly you're in like this group and you're like, this is not where I intended to end up. But the reaction video was angry, and it was calling the whole thing out, saying this type of approach is actually harmful to men, because you're basically dissuading men from wanting to be masculine, from wanting to exercise, from having ambition and trying to make money and be successful and all of those things. And then it made me think about the comment you made about the being ridiculously rich and ripped at all costs type of thing. But what was even more interesting is I went down that rabbit hole and I was looking at the comment section, and a lot of the guys that were on this podcast were commenting how they agree with him. Now, those same individuals were here talking about the importance of mental health, the importance of being kind and honest and taking care of yourself and being a healthy person, a healthy man. I feel like this line between being a healthy masculine man and wanting to be rich and in shape and ambitious and marry someone and be successful and have a house and travel and all that stuff, I feel like it almost feels like now they're on opposite sides. And a lot of men are like, why can't I want these things and not be toxic? And why can't I equally want to take care of my mental health and not be considered feminine or weak or beta or whatever terms are being tossed out there? And I feel like most of the men are somewhere in the middle of both of that.
Great question. Yeah. I don't know, Todd. Do you have an answer?
Well, I should, full disclosure, I used to be the CEO of White Ribbon.
Oh, I didn't know
that. That's my former life. So just full disclosure on that one there. I think partly what that points to for me, Samir, is the complexity of just what it means to be a man today. And, it's not, again, like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, there are great things about being man. There are great things about being masculine. There are great things about fitness and ambition and, providing for your family and making a good living. Those are all great things, right? But we don't have a roadmap for what that means for men today outside of the context of also power and privilege and domination and aggression and anger and, subjecting other people to your will. We don't have that out there in the world yet, right? Like, a lot of us believe it. A lot of us want to carve it out and create it, but it's not mainstream. It's not the social norm at the moment. So we're in this kind of cusp of trying to figure out, what does it mean to be both of those things? And when we listen to young guys who are engaged in that masculinity influencer world, that's where we see some of the divergence start to happen, right? Yeah, I want to get fit. Yeah, I want to be successful. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make money so I can enjoy life, but I can provide for people too. But then comes the other stuff, like, it's women's fault that you're not here. It's, it's not enough to say I'm injured and I shouldn't maybe work out today. You got to push through the pain. Or if you can't get there by yourself, it's okay to take steroids or other substances to help you get there, right? It's feeding that algorithm we talked about in the beginning. You got to keep them coming. And you keep them coming by making them feel like crap.
Right.
And that's where things get into the dangerous spaces, at least for my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. I like to think of, so I was working with a boy who's in grade 7. And being a grade 7 boy, I think this is where a lot of these issues are kind of starting around this age.
You're like 12 at that point?
Yeah, 12.
Yeah.
11 to 12, kind of that age. And that's a hard age to be. I'm sure you both remember, but being in grade 7.
Awkward in so many ways.
So awkward. I work with a lot of kids in grade 6, 7, 8. Like those ages are just very difficult, right? And we're talking and it comes out that what a lot of boys are teased for in their class are being short. And so if you even go back to child development, what we know about puberty is that girls that go through puberty earlier than boys, right? So if you're a grade 6, 7, 8 boy, it is likely that the girls in your class are taller than you, stronger than you. Todd's like, that was me.
my early years, yes.
Right? And so then think about, so now I'm maybe a shorter boy who's kind of scrawny. I haven't started going through puberty yet. Neither have most of my peers. Maybe a few have.
There's always a few boys that you're like, you look like you're 5 years older than me.
Exactly. Like, how did you get here,
Yeah.
right? And those boys who do go through puberty earlier, it's very interesting. So girls who go through puberty earlier actually struggle more when they have like a more adult body at an earlier age. Boys who go through puberty earlier actually fare better. Because they start to have that stronger, taller, more muscular body at an earlier age. And it's just very interesting to see that they do become more socially accepted. They kind of become the boy that everyone like looks up to. So if I'm that age and the girls in my class are stronger than me, the other boys make fun of each other for who's the shortest, who's the scrawniest. And I'm feeling really like insecure in my body, right? And I think that like we have to kind of look at child development too and like this like emotional situation that's happening for boys. And then I stumble across these videos that are telling me how to get fit and strong and built and big. And it actually makes a lot of sense that they're going to be really drawn to wanting to watch that because in school they might be being teased, made fun of for being that scrawny like boy. And it's honestly, there's nothing they can do about it except for try to work out. And so then they go down that path. And then that path also leads them to hearing things about girls, like, you know, all of these things, incel culture, all of these different things about girls. And it makes sense they latch on to that because at this point, the girls in their class are taller than them, you know, sometimes stronger than them, all of these things.
More mature.
And more mature mentally,
like,
yes.
So they just feel
Capable of-
stupid talking to them
Yeah.
at the same time. Yeah.
And then like even deeper, like often our school system, not just in Canada, but just across the globe is not set up for boys. So boys are more often getting in trouble in class because they have to sit and their bodies are designed to move more than a girl's body. Like schools are really set up to do well for girls and boys struggle. Even I see that as young as like in kindergarten, like just the variation. And so you're getting in trouble in class. The girls are more developed. They're more mature, all of these things. So I do find that all of these other factors also can lead to just this desire to seek that out online. And then when you're hearing it, you're like, okay, now I feel better about myself, right? And so I think looking at those deeper issues and how can we address that before they go and find these videos, I think can be really helpful in the way that we approach young men.
You said something interesting. You said, if I'm not mistaken, schools are better suited for girls than they are for boys at that age. How come?
Yeah, and I know that's kind of a broad statement, and
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think I know why, but I just want to hear from you.
Well, I see it because I do a lot of work with early education preschoolers. And if you just look at the way that children develop, girls and boys differently, boys are more active. Mm-hmm. They are. And studies even show like from the womb to like when they become that age. And so when you're expecting a boy to sit in class for as long of periods as they are, and just interesting research on how even recess time has been declining. And so kids are forced to sit in their desk for longer and longer. You're kind of setting them up to act out, get out of their desks, blurt things out. They get in trouble more. So from their earliest days in school, they are more likely to be the ones in trouble. It's more likely to be the ones to be sent to the principal's office. So from those early ages, like we're already kind of seeing that discrepancy where this is not always the case. There's definitely girls who struggle in school too, of course. But we're seeing this discrepancy between the girls are the ones who are well-behaved, celebrated by the teachers, like they do great. And the boys are the ones who are struggling and end up getting in trouble. And so if you take it back to those earliest ages, and it's just, I find that really interesting. My line of work is a lot in those younger years, but sometimes even especially if a boy has a late birthday, delaying the start of kindergarten, letting them be that 1 year more mature actually has a lot of benefit to them throughout their entire education. So that's kind of a side tangent, but it is very interesting.
But I absolutely agree with you because just remember from my own experience in school, I had so much energy. All I wanted to do was just let it out. But my elementary school was not a very particularly sports-oriented school.
Yeah.
And my only physical activity was either recess, and I was the scrawny kid who was small and picked on and bullied, so I didn't have a lot of friends. And so the only other activity that was in a group session was gym class of all of like an hour, and that was it for the rest of the day. And I didn't play sports after school, and so that was my only outlet. And at one point, I remember having this conversation with my parents where they were like, yeah, your teachers thought you had ADHD. And then we took you to a doctor because we were following everything. And they're like, no, he just has a lot of energy. But I see that comment from a lot of parents of like, hey, we're so quick to label our kids with having some sort of disorder instead of trying to understand why they're behaving the way they're behaving. And it makes me wonder whether there is something that we can collectively do about our education system. I know that might be more in your area of expertise, but
what can we do here? Let's solve it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not my area of expertise here, but like systems change is got to be part of the solution.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have to move past this kind of binary as well of like, it's either going to help boys or hurt girls and help boys. It's not that simple, right? Like kids are all different. Kids all need different things. The education system is under incredible stress, right? Like teachers today also have probably
So much.
one of the most ridiculously hard jobs in the world.
Yep.
And like
I can only imagine.
What they have to navigate and manage with the resources that they have is incredibly hard, right? So there definitely is a place for systems change and systems response. And I think one of the encouraging things that we're seeing is that, we're starting to think about how systems like the education system impact boys and girls differently and understanding the need for it. And while we may not be at systems change yet, I can remember my son had a split grade class and it was set up such that there was like 20 or 17 boys in the younger grade and 6 girls in the older grade of this split class, right? And his teacher at that time was amazing because he's like, okay, this is not working at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, we're going outside. And like the boys could run around for 20 minutes. And he did something in the more educational focus space with the girls that were part of that split class. But he recognized like, it's just like these boys cannot.
They can't.
Both these girls are older and in a different grade, but these boys cannot just sit here.
Yeah.
Like they're going to lose it if they do.
It's funny because
so he's had a chance to see that gender difference in how to make a system respond.
Well, speaking of that, I remember when I was picking the high school I was going to go to, I had a choice between an all-boys high school or a mixed gender high school. And I thought it was so weird that anybody would want to go to an all-boys high school. I'm like, why wouldn't you also want to be around girls? And I'm a teenager, I want to be around girls. And now that I'm older and I've done work in an all-boys high school, I've seen how they've developed a system to specifically cater to that extra energy, where they've built it into the way they teach, the breaks in between classes, the way they do things. And I thought it was really interesting because they've said they've seen such great results because of that. And I wonder if there is an argument to be made about having boys in a class at a younger age by themselves and girls in a class at a younger age by themselves to try to cater to that difference. But
if only it was just about energy levels, right?
I
imagine there's going to be so much more nuance to that.
It's hard. I mean, there's so much nuance and there's so many things to look at, and also the value of having them together. I do think there is value, in having them be able to be friends with each other and see each other and get to know each other and on all of those things. But, I think some simple things we can do is like, don't take away recess as a punishment for a little boy who,
detention.
It's like simple things like that I talk to teachers. I do a lot of work with teachers. A lot of my really good friends are teachers, right? And I think we're already making some good shifts in terms of that, right? Like, let's not punish little boys for talking out in class and getting out by taking away recess and making them sit even longer, right? Like, let's let them run. That's probably the answer. That's what they need. So I think that there's some simple things that we can do, but obviously greater system changes that need to happen as well. But I don't know. There's so
you
much
don't have
nuance.
a magic solution,
I wish, I'm telling you.
Okay. So we're running up on time here. And honestly, I wish we could do like 3 more hours of this. But if for anyone listening and watching, if they have a son, a young son, or a young brother, or a young nephew, what piece of advice can you share with them about how to navigate what's happening right now for them? And then on the flip side of that, if they have a daughter or a younger sister or a niece, what can you share with them to help them navigate that young lady, because she is also going to feel the effects of what's happening to young men?
Yeah. Okay. I could start here.
Go for it, Jess.
I'll start with just kind of everything that I think I've been sharing, which is the relationship. And so I would say to prioritizing the relationship that you have with your child at an early age, and for parents of young boys, like they need to have these positive male role models. And so if you're a dad listening to this, like talk to your son about your emotions. Let him see all these sides of you. Like let him see you work on your fitness and go for a run or whatever it is, but also let him see when you have something tricky happen, talk to him about it. Like, hey, today this happened at work and it was tough for me and this is how I handled it. So to be that role model, I think the parental relationship and the way that they see you, that's the blueprint for how they are going to want to act, right? Of course, there's all these external factors, but I think that's the biggest safeguard we can have. And then same for girls. So, obviously I'm a girl parent, but even for my husband, like we've had so many conversations about the way that their father treats them is how they're going to learn to accept treatment from other men and throughout their lives. Yeah. And so, like, obviously my role as a mother is very important, but his role as a father, the way that he treats them really matters, because if he treats them well and respects them, they're going to learn this is what I can expect. And if there's anything different, they're going to know that's not right. Like that doesn't make sense. And so, of course, all the other things in conversations, but I'd say that's the number one thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, can I just say what she said? Because that was brilliant, but awesome, Jess. I think for boys, it's all of that, and it can be just summed up. There's a great book out now by some American authors called Talk to Your Boys. Just talk to your boys. And Jess, you put it so well. Don't always just share the fluffy, easy stuff. Share the hard stuff. And I remember this a visceral parenting moment for me when my son was going through some hard times and I was really struggling to get him to talk about it. And so it just kind of came to me and I said, well, I had something like that when I was a kid. And I went on into a story about a tricky thing for me when I was young, around his age. It wasn't the exact same thing. It was something different. But all of a sudden his like reluctance to talk went from this to like, he was just staring me down, listening.
You might finally understand him.
And that was such a light bulb moment for me as a parent. Okay, just get into the messiness with your kid and don't underestimate what they can handle. You can keep it age appropriate, but you can keep it real too, right? And be authentic. So talk to your boys and do it often and focus on that quality over quantity for that. And for girls, I couldn't agree more. Like, the way we show up as men in young girls' lives is extremely important. And I think it's more than just the relational behavior kind of dynamics. It's also, you have to show the young women in your life that you're an advocate for gender equality, that you're not going to tolerate misogyny or insults or hurtful things. Like you not only have to model that behavior, you have to call out the wrong behavior. And that's partly from my past lives around working on gender-based violence and gender equality. But you have to be that for your daughter as well. They have to know that there are guys that are not going to tolerate that kind of business in the world,
Absolutely. Jess, Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome. And I hope we can have more of these conversations, because I genuinely believe, now more than ever, but I genuinely believe that it does start with us, really and truly, to have these conversations out in the open. And hopefully it starts to trickle down. That was the whole idea behind this podcast. Is like just get these conversations out in the open, and hopefully somebody comes across it and goes, oh, okay, I'm going to think about this a little differently. And a quick congratulations on the news. I don't know, Jess, if you've heard, but there's going to be a new strategy for men's health in Canada.
Yeah, we're very excited. The Minister of Health, Marjorie Michelle, just before the holidays in Canada, announced plans for a new strategy for men and boys' health. That's hopefully going to include a lot of these things and not just focus on those individual behaviors and not just be like, we need more money for this, but what can we do collectively and how can we change the systems for men and boys? And ultimately, our belief is that healthier men make for healthier communities, healthier families, a healthier country. So that's something that we're very excited about.
That's
so
amazing. And that's the first time in Canada.
First time in Canada.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
it was in the UK that
Australia, UK, Ireland are all going down that path now.
Yeah.
And we're thrilled that Canada's going to start looking at it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Todd.
And let's have this conversation again down the road in a few months when it's an existential change for you as well.
Yes.
You're pushing up against that now.
When
but
that little guy gets born.
Yeah.
I am so excited.
Yeah.
I will admit that I have always dreamt about having a girl. I just love the idea of being a girl dad. And I'm not going to lie to you, when Mila told me that, I keep saying Mila told you, when the doctor told us that it was a boy, I had this moment of like, I'm actually worried. When most of my buddies have said, they're like, oh, I feel more confident with a boy than I do with a girl. And I'm like, I don't know why I feel the opposite. And I think it's because I know so much about what's happening that I'm very in tune.
Well, you're
with
so
it.
better prepared.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I hope so.
I don't think you...
I'm going to call you both.
Yeah, you can. But I understand the fear, but at the same time, like, who better to have a son than someone who's been having these conversations for years? And there might be something healing in it, having a son, right?
Yeah.
And,
And I don't know if you know, you don't have to stop at one either, right?
No, yeah. I mean,
I mean, we'll let you,
Mila,
we'll go one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time. That was always my strategy. One kid at a time. We'll see how it goes. But
thank you both so much.
Yeah,
I
you're
really
so
appreciate it. And good luck with the new implementation.
Thank you.
I hope that goes really well. Good luck with all the work that you're doing, because I know you're basically on the ground fighting the good fight day in and day out.
Yeah.
And
It's important.
It's so important. It's underrated in so many ways. And I hope that there are more parents out there who, if they need help, they seek it, and they seek it in the right places.
exactly. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
great to meet you, Jess. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Great to meet you too.